Thank you. We can move on to the approval of the agenda. Apparently, Aaron, we have a change. Aaron? Is the VFW not going to be able to make it tonight?
Sorry, that's correct, Madam Mayor. The VFW informed me that they're not going to be able to be present tonight, so they will hopefully be able to present their recognition of Courtney Kuntz and Lynn Sivers at the April 27th meeting.
All right, thank you. With that deletion, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. All right, I see everybody. Thank you very much. Everyone raised their hand. We're going to move on then to reports. We'll move right into Administrator Curry's administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor. First thing I'd like to do is ask Tanya to give an update on our COVID activities.
Morning, or good morning, sorry guys. Good evening, Council, Mayor, Council, and Administrator Curry. Just a little tired here. Corrales was looking really good. We went 4 days with no increase in cases. We may have gone 5 or 6. The state is no longer going to report on weekends. They're going to do a bulk reporting on Mondays to give staff some time off. We went from 305 to 308. Friday was 305. We went to 308 on Monday. And then today we did get 1 additional case of COVID in Corrales. Vaccines are still going really well. We ran a pod on Saturday, which was a pop-up pod of about 50 people. We are down to, the list says we have no more homebound people to vaccinate in Corrales, but I have been able to find a few more that are homebound or at least need to come in through a drive-through pod that I'll be getting scheduled. We'll continue running our Thursday pods, but pods are slowing down and not filling, but a lot of it has to do with people who are now needing to get vaccinated, are younger, and they're working. So Chief Martinez and I are going to work on doing some evening and weekend ones to accommodate those, as well as the large Thursday pod. They'll be smaller. We'll be running 50 to 75 people, so we don't need to ask Mike and Lynn and planning and zoning and Aaron and everyone to come out and help us do them. I do now have access into the Sandoval County, the whole state site, so I can pull people and see who has and has not been vaccinated, to start reaching out to them and find out if it's a technical issue, if they've decided they don't want to be vaccinated. That list is down to about 910 in Corrales. However, I know it's going to be less than that because some of the names on there I've personally vaccinated, which means they've got duplicate entries in the system. So I'm also working to get those removed. We're going to be doing homebound again tomorrow. We vaccinated today at the Sagebrush church with the New Mexico DOH, and DOH is still planning on staying with us. We're also looking to do a special pod on Tuesday, not this Tuesday, next Tuesday, and hoping to get some really good media and maybe some trusted partner stuff out of that. New Mexico United has asked to do a pod for Pfizer based around their practice and game schedule. And they have between 20 and 50. So we'll run a pod bigger than that so we can bring some citizens in also. But we think it'd be a great way to get out to our soccer loving youth and more of the Hispanic community, that if they're going to go out and get vaccinated, maybe it's okay to sign up. So we're really looking for those trusted community partners. Any questions for me? I'll be happy to sit for questions or stand if you want me to.
I think Councilor Waldman has a question for you, Tanya.
Yeah, I know you're so tired. I prefer you to sit. Question about the news from this morning on the J&J vaccine. And I know that you were using that for. Can you hear?
Yes, I can, Councilor Waldman.
Yeah, and I know you were giving that for homebound, so it'd be the 1 shot. How do you plan to adjust for that?
So first of all, with the J&J vaccine, you know, the FDA and the CDC are being very, very careful, which is good. It was 6 cases of all females 18 to 48 that got blood clots. And so they put a hold, but we've not gotten rid of any vaccine. And that's 6 out of 6.8 million. I actually worked with the toxicologist today. We vaccinated together, and we think they're being very careful, which is good. But we think J&J will be out again soon. Might have some advisories. We don't know. They've got to look into where what was different with these women. Was there anything the same? And was it from the vaccine?
Right.
Because we know blood clots can be pretty common just from sitting too long on an airplane or a car. So we're going to wait to see that before we redo J&J. Tomorrow we decided we didn't want to cancel. So we contacted everybody and had 2 people drop off the list because I have a group of people whose doctors will only allow them to have J&J based on their allergies and what Moderna and Pfizer are made of. So we pulled them out, but we'll be doing Pfizer, which means we'll get to go visit them twice, but that's fine. It's too important not to. We did Buena Vista Retirement Community yesterday, 35 people there. And then 35. And then we did 2 people in Corrales. So with J&J with no bad outcomes yet. But we'll just switch to Pfizer for now. And the ones that need J&J for medical reasons, we'll go back out and get them later.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from counselors? Tanya, when can we expect the next color map?
2 weeks from last Wednesday.
Okay. Okay.
Comes out every 2 weeks. We're not with them not breaking down the Saturdays. It's a little harder for me to get a look at it. We should have out the new modeling map, and I'm sorry I did not look at it. I just walked in the door right before council meeting,
Sure.
which will give me an idea if we're still accelerating. But I'll be happy to look at that modeling map and send it out to Aaron to send to everybody. The one
Great.
that is whether or not, the one that keeps saying it's accelerating, I'd like to see decelerating.
Wouldn't we all? Let's think green.
Turquoise.
Turquoise. Let's think turquoise. If there are no other questions, thank you so much, Tanya. I know how much everybody appreciates all the efforts that everybody's putting into getting us vaccinated in. Our zip code is looking really good, by the way. We've got a very high vaccination rate in Corrales.
We do. We have an amazing, we had about 5,000 people sign up and we're down to 910. And I know for a fact some of those are duplicates or are vaccinated outside the system, because I called some of them that were on the homebound and they were vaccinated outside the system and just didn't update their system.
Good news. Thank you very much, Commander.
You're welcome.
Mr. Curry?
Mayor, before I ask Aaron to report on some ICIP reports, for those of you who read political blogs, there's a nice article this morning in Politico.com announcing that New Mexico is the leading model in the United States for vaccine processing. So I would direct you to that if you want to see a nice story on New Mexico. Aaron, you want to talk about ICIP?
Thank you, Ron and Madam Mayor, councilors. So now that the legislative session has sort of come to an end and all of the bills pertaining to capital outlay have been signed, we're pretty excited that we have received all the monies we thought we would for certain items that we were sort of told verbally. So confirmed now, we're going to be getting $40,000 for animal services, vehicles and equipment, $100,000 for village parking lot pavings, $200,000 for a fire facility, $75,000 for the Thompson Fence Line Trail, $141,000 for building repairs, for municipal building repairs, $40,000 for planning and zoning and vehicles and equipment, as well as, excuse me, $243,000 for Meadowlark Phase 2, the pathway. So we're pretty excited. Oh, and $50,000 for FHWA sign reflectivity replacement. So we're very excited. It was a kind of an odd year for capital outlay, and so we're just glad that we were able to get some monies and be able to work on some of our continued capital improvements.
Any questions for Aaron on the ICIP? Yes, Counselor Knight.
I just had one quick question. What was the last one? I didn't hear you. You broke up.
I'm sorry, it's for, we do it for sign reflectivity replacement. So we have a bunch of signs that would not be considered in compliance with FHWA reflectivity requirements. And so we've been slowly but surely replacing them and using capital funds to do that as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions about our ICIP, Administrator Curry?
A couple of notices here. At our next meeting, we intend to have an audit presentation on our audit. It's becoming available to the public now, so look forward to that coming up on our meeting on 2 weeks from tonight on the 7th. So for those of you who are interested in that, we've had a lot of discussion about it. The second thing I want to advise the council on is that we're getting ready to go into the budgeting process. And this budgeting process is going to be a little more expansive this year. We're going to have hearings in front of the clerk, myself, and Raina on the May 4th and 5th. And these hearings will be for departments to have these meetings with us. And we're also inviting the public. We've had some interest in people who want to make proposals to the council on ways to spend money or to enhance budgets on various commissions that we have in the village. And so I ask that they contact me or Aaron as we set these meetings up on the 4th and the 5th of May. And then on the 13th of May, a time yet to be determined, we're going to have a work study session.
For smashing garlic.
We're going to have a work study session in front of the village council and anybody else who wants to participate. We don't know yet whether it'll be a Zoom or a hybrid, but mark your calendars for May 13th for a work study session following those presentations that would come out of the hearings. The last thing I want to just talk about a little bit is the Corrales Water Advisory Board. I think you all found that in your packet tonight. The members of that advisory board that finished its report last year were Bert Cox, Wendy Fideo, Brad Summerall, Dan Turton, and Marianne Wezelik. And what I wanted to visit with you a little bit about tonight, they have their summary of 6 recommendations that they presented in their report and that you have in front of you. And I'm just briefly, we'll just run through these real quickly. We recommend the village not pursue developing a municipal water system at this time. Number 2, public education on water and sewer issues is highly recommended. Number 3, the liquid sewage collection line should be extended until it reaches as much of the village as is practical. Number 4, the village should participate in water monitoring programs offered by the state and other agencies and should not duplicate existing regulations. The village should not create its own system of well monitoring, water quality testing, or issuing of well permits. They recommend the village identify an environmental staff person, and the village should support the expansion of the fire protection water lines, fire hydrants, and additional water tanks. So just real briefly on item 5, where they identify that the village, they recommend the village should identify an environmental staff person. Most of the issues that we deal with on the federal government issue comes from what's called an MS4 permitting that's handled by the Environmental Protection Agency out of Dallas, Texas. And for those of you who don't know, or maybe those of you who don't care what MS4 stands for, it stands for Municipal Separate Storm Water Sewage System. And it is currently monitored by the federal government because the state of New Mexico lacks primacy in stormwater runoff regulations. It's one of 3 states, as you've heard me say before, that doesn't have that. But within our village, the 3 folks 3.5 folks, 4 folks that are most involved in this are Public Works, the Fire Department, uh, uh, and the Parks and Rec, and Lori in Planning and Zoning. And so I know Lori attends regularly MS4 meetings that are conducted in conjunction with all the other participants in and around Bernalillo County. And so what I'm recommending, because I know this is a working document, that I will be moving forward with some plans to look at this and to implement things that we want to do that we want to do in coming from these recommendations. So I would invite any of the counselors or any of the community that want to contact me as we go forward on trying to see what is good and in this plan and what we think is realistic that we want to accomplish going forward. So it's a good plan. The folks put in a lot of effort on it. They incorporated a lot of work that had been done before them and tried to bring it up to current standards and the needs and the wants of the village. So again, you have that report in your packet, and I look forward to hearing from any of you as we move forward on this. And that's all I have tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Curry, I had some questions and I'll just distill them down to maybe one or two. Do we know, in the report, it says on page 13, there's a footnote that the village has around 25 acre feet of well water and about 52 feet of surface water rights. Do we know if the village is still current on those values, and is that sufficient to meet the village needs? And, you know, it's, I mean, if you don't have the answer right now, we can get back to it later. And also, I think Councilor Knight mentioned about another line down Corrales Road, but in the report, they talked about connecting to possibly Loma Larga. And is the Pueblo Los Cerros line, is it finished? And is it possible that we could connect maybe a second line from Corrales Road up to it?
I'm not going to give you partial answers, Counselor. I don't know if Michael Chavez wants to comment on the condition of any of those other lines over on Loma Larga, but we did have to get some water from Bernalillo in the last year, so those are things that we need to look at. As what we have in the bank as far as water rights right now, I need to check on that to get precise numbers for you. As far as actual wet water that we have. Michael?
Councilor Murray, Councilors, Mayor, Ron. The Pueblo Los Cerros project is almost done. That is a grinder system, and we have a step system, so we cannot utilize theirs. We are looking at maybe retrofitting ours into a grinder system or a vacuum right now, so that's in the works.
Thank you. Councilor Knight, remember, okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, you know, I hope that whether it be over on Loma Larga or on the east side of the village, that there is an alternate step system or sewer system, because if there's, again, we talked about if the one line that we have goes down, we need to have an alternative just in case to make sure that it doesn't, you know, clog up and then we have no way to get around it, or people have to wait a long time. Or so I would think that either down Loma Larga and then, you know, hit Mountain Shadows, or the east side of Corrales Road, near that other ditch, just to make sure that we have all of our bases covered and that we're being mindful of, you know, only having one. Sooner or later it's going to go down. So that's my thought.
Michael, did you have a response to Councilor Knight?
Yes, Councilor Knight, Mayor, Ron, councilors. We are in the starting blocks on this, but yes, we do want to create a bypass. So if something does happen to our main line, we can bypass this and pump the other way. but we also want to use that to be able to pick up wastewater from the residents that it's serving. So that is in the works, but it's very young right now.
Thank you. And I think I saw Counselor Waldman.
Just a quick question, Ron. You may not know the answer. I checked with USDA Rural Development. I was surprised to see that there's funding for that for the Pueblo de los Cerros project, since we've always been cut out of USDA Rural Development projects except for solar and some other ancillary kinds of things. Do you know if that's a change in their position, that Corrales does not qualify for rural development funds or not? I checked with
Counselor-
Gary McDermott on this. He was unsure.
Counselor, I'll check into that. We know when I saw that sign pop over there, I was a little surprised myself because USDA usually doesn't get this far into the big cities, so to speak. And so they must be thinking that we're part of the big city.
Well,
So, but
my understanding is we qualify as a rural community, but we do not qualify because of the average income in the village. And that
Right.
kind of knocks us out on a number of projects. And that's why the sign, really interested me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever we can find out, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the Counselors Forum. This section is for information purposes only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. Anybody have something they'd like to share? Yes, Counselor Knight.
I just wanted to, I had talked to Michael Chavez because I had a couple constituents call me about the asphalt tailings that are being put in along the roads if there's like holes. And is there any way that we could make sure that there's not so much drift from those? I mean, as soon as a car goes over those, it's out in the street. And then it becomes a matter of safety issues because people slide on that, cars can slide on that. Is there any way that those asphalt millings could be like tampered down more or have some kind of a ceiling over that so they don't spread so much?
Thank you,
Counselor
Counselor
Knight.
Knight. Does anybody else have something that, normally we don't get into a back and forth in this one, but I can have Michael contact you,
Okay.
Mel. Yes, Counselor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let everybody know that we need to be practicing some kind of dust control around our properties and on the roadways. So please don't be speeding. We have villagers that have allergies and problems with breathing, and the dust really creates some problems. But let's be cognizant of our neighbors and respectful, and let's keep the dust down to a minimum if we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor
Yeah,
Murray.
just an
Counselor
update,
Waldman.
follow up to the presentation was done on Saucy Park, the last meeting. I had a meeting last week with Michael and Aaron and Lynn, a preliminary meeting. Tomorrow we're having a meeting with Renee and Lynn again to try to nail down some possible aspects that we can include in the park. So hopefully we'll have some kind of a report in the next couple of weeks on that.
That's terrific. Okay. Anybody else want to pipe in for the Counselors Forum? All right. Do we have anyone for the Corrales Forum, Aaron?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have Kurt Flora and Suzanne Huff Flora. So Mr. Flora, whenever you're ready, go ahead and start and you'll get your 3 minutes though.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can.
Yes, hi.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Kurt Flora, 560 Andrews Lane, Corrales, New Mexico. We believe we've been silent long enough. Since I only have 3 minutes, I want to bring to your attention why our due process case was filed on May 17, 2019, and our lawsuit against the village was filed on May 14, 2020 for falsification of documents, extortion of money, IPRA violations, and Open Meetings Act violations. Today, I want to concentrate on the IPRA request that we filed on August 21st, 2018. We requested the resignation letter from Candace Cordova, and it was mailed to Mayor Corrales, Joanne Rourke on August 4th, 2018 at 10:58 a.m. There's a copy of that. On August 23rd, 2018, we received not the resignation letter from Candace Cordova, but what looks to be a forwarded email from one commissioner to the other commissioners, and not the letter we requested. Today, the mayor or the village has refused to turn over this resignation letter because it involves why Mrs. Cordova resigned from the Planning and Zoning Commission. It is important to our case. It's been 966 days since our request of this letter. I also want to bring up that the village has refused to follow its own ordinance in many disparate ways. I want you to write down these ordinances: 1877 definitions under easements, 1881 A2D under land use, 1886 D3 under land use, 1887 B2 under land use, 1893 under fees, and one last one is Resolution 16-006. Since I plan on prove to you all the corruption the village has done to us in the past 3 years, and we want to share it with the public now, everything I'm going to expose is public record, or in this case, what has been kept out of public records on purpose. What I want to do is show you real quick. I don't know if you see this or not. These are the village written minutes. These are actually not the village written minutes, but our transcribed minutes of the village meetings. Now, if you look at everything that's yellowed out in these papers, is what has been kept out of the village minutes pertaining to our case. Now, there's a lot. There's page after page after page after page, sentence after sentence. What was kept out of the record on purpose, everything that's been yellowed out that I've just showed you, and you've only seen just a little bit of it, was included was a part of the motion made by Commissioner Sawina on November 14th, 2018, that included using the October 5th plat. That was not on the village's written minutes, showing that we were approved with a 20-foot road easement. What I cannot share with you at this moment are all the recorded information I have, because it hasn't been heard in court or is yet not public record. What I plan to do is bring up every violation in a 3-minute segment, if that's what I have to do in every council meeting, until we either go to court or settle this. The next council meeting, we will start by showing that the plat was fixed before the first meeting ever took place, and review the ordinance 1886, 1887, resolution 16006, and why there should never been a resubmittal, which resulted in extortion of money by the village.
Mr. Flora?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you could either wrap it up or pass it along to Suzanne for her 3 minutes, please.
Okay, I got about less than a minute to go, if that's okay. Or I can pass it on to Suzanne. She can read the rest of it. It's less than a minute.
That's fine. Go ahead and finish then. Thank you.
Okay. After that, we will address the After that, we will address the falsification of documents written by the village administrator Suran Dur, and why it's taken over 800 days for the village to release the village attorney letter and a note which proves the falsification of documents. So is the mayor or the village of Corrales going to release the Canada Cordova resignation letter, or are they going to keep violating IPRA? We feel have no choice but go to public with the corruption going on in the village. And here is, letter from the Attorney General stating that they should release this to us. Thank you very much for hearing me today. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Madam Mayor, that concludes the Corrales forum for today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the village council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. We have approval of minutes for March 23rd, 2021 regular meeting, and we have approval of minutes for March 25th, which was a special council meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take a roll call vote. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker. Councilor Parker,
Stupid unmute. Aye, sorry about that.
that's okay. Thank you very much. All right, under new business, we have consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2108, a resolution for approval of the official intent of the 2021 GO bond. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Yes, Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilors, I'm a little worried about this resolution. I would thought maybe we would had a work study to discuss what exactly we are buying and what this money is going for. It also looks like it's a mix of two bond elections, if I'm not mistaken. The first being the 1.5 million for the roadways and equipment, and then the second one is the Parks and Recs bond election as well. So I have several questions that I think need to be asked. Either we can do this in the work study, which I would prefer, or I will have to hash it out here, which might drag things out a little bit. If there's not a time issue on this,
There is.
there is.
I
Well,
believe there is. Could we hear from our bond attorney, Jill Sweeney? Perhaps she can answer your questions, Councilor
Okay.
Murray.
Sure. Madam Mayor, members of the council, as you know, you have before you basically what is an intent resolution. The first resolution in the connection with the issuance of general obligation bonds by the village. So the purpose of this resolution is to direct the working group to submit an application to the New Mexico Finance Authority for its consideration, and then to move along with the process. So you yet to have to come before you the ordinance that authorizes the bond. So this just gets the process going and enables the village to submit an application. The projects here are the result of the March 2021 election that had several questions. And so I don't have those questions right in front of me, Councilor Murray. So my apologies, but there was a road question as well as a Parks and Recs question. So the staff has worked on the ICIP plan, as you know, and has suggested just very generally as we go forward that we discuss with the Finance Authority financing approximately $835,000 in road maintenance and construction equipment, $250,000 for MAP and co-op projects administered through the Department of Transportation, $415,000 for planning, redesigning, and repaving of roads, $415,000 for planning, designing, engineering, and construction of parks and recreational facilities. So those are not set in stone at this point, but are general categories of authorized authorized issuance, if you will, that that the staff has prioritized for capital projects. Does that help some? And then be back to you as the council for discussions as we move through the process.
So why haven't we applied for the entire Parks and Rec bond issue then, rather than just piecemeal? Because if we're going to be charged a fee for administration purposes, are we going to get charged another administration fee for the balance of the Parks and Rec bond issue? I mean, or can you add that on to the existing one so we don't get charged another $65,000 or $68,000?
Madam Mayor, Councilor Murray, typically in a general obligation bond program, we will issue bonds every other year in order, as you know, to keep that mill levy constant and allow for you to prioritize projects, but keep your debt service reasonable. And we're happy to bring in your financial advisor to have more in-depth conversations with you about how the par amount, excuse me, the par amount and the capacity issues work together. So this is the first tranche, and we would expect that there would be 2 tranches in order to keep that debt service of the village constant and at a manageable level. So as debt comes off on the back end, more you'll have additional payments on the front end, and that's then what allows your debt service to remain stable. So that's the reason for splitting it, as does as do most, as does the state, as well as Albuquerque and Bernalillo and all of the surrounding communities.
Have we already been collecting taxes for this bond issues?
Yes, Councilor Murray, your taxes, what is happening here is this issuance will allow you to finance these projects, but keep your debt service relatively constant and your mill levy constant, so that taxes won't won't rise. So you're paying off existing bonds from your other issues, and you're layering on some new.
So what really bothers me is this last minute things that keep popping up on our agenda. Why don't we get a little bit more notice that this is coming up and that there is a deadline for these items? I'd rather see something a little bit more transparent about, hey, we've got this coming up in the next couple meetings. Let us know ahead of time that this is going to be an agenda item, please. Because I don't like 4 days or 5 days of trying to review this and try to make sense of it without having to ask at the last minute and tie everybody up.
Councilor Paquette?
Yeah, I have a question. I think kind of along the lines of Councilor Murray's. Are these the legal and administration fees we're paying for this? Is it a percentage of what we're bonding, or is it a per project fee? Because if it's a per project, then what Councilor Murray is, I think, bringing up makes a ton of sense. That it doesn't make a lot of sense to do this multiple times and pay this fee multiple times on the same bonds when we could do it all under one. And I understand that creates some variability in our mill levy funds, but we're paying 3% of the bond money in fees. And if we could do that, cut it in half by doing all the bonds at once, it seems like that would be good for the village.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, typically for finance authority loans of this nature, your fees are quite low and don't vary with the par amount of the bonds.
I think
Okay.
Councilor Burkett's point is
Thank
that
you.
we get charged multiple times, though.
Councillor Murray, Madam Chair, yes, typically you would be charged once for each cycle, and we'd be happy to review with you the projects and fees and bring your financial advisor in. We can ask your financial advisor whether what he would advise and whether he believes that the village could issue its entire March 2020 election authorization in one bond issue, if that is your
Well, the other
preference.
concern I have
I'm
too
sorry,
is
my
that
concern though, excuse me, my concern is that will really be difficult for our mill levy rate, which is what we want to keep. We don't want people's taxes to rise. We really want them to have the benefit of the bond money at a stable rate. And that's what I would
Right.
be concerned about.
And you may not be able to do that. You may not be able to issue the entire authorization in one chunk and keep your mill levy constant.
All right.
Mayor,
We can
once
bring
we-
in Mr. Angst, and we're happy to continue. Like Councilor Murray, this is an intent resolution and just an authorization of the team to proceed. Certainly didn't mean to surprise you, and this is not final action by the council. So we can continue to have discussions going forward, both with the finance authority as well as with village staff and council, and be happy to bring your financial advisor in to run some scenarios and determine how authorization or issuance of the entire authorization would impact the property tax mill levy of the village.
Well, the other concern I have too is in 2 years, if you bring up the balance of the bond issue, what is the interest rates going to be? They could be up through the roof. We don't know. And so consequently, if these bond issues, if we have these elections, we ought to be jumping on these things and either presenting them to the public and letting them know what it's going to cost them. Because in 2 years, we may be, inflation may just decide to go through the roof, and then it's really going to cost us then.
That's certainly interest rates are unpredictable, as you know, and something that all governing bodies need to consider as they go forward and develop their programs and the timing of the issuance of bonds. We hope they don't rise, but there's not much room to go. There's not much room to go any direction but up. I think it's economists may predict based on what the Federal Reserve does and actions that they take when they think that interest rates will rise for tax exempt bonds of governments and when they won't. But you're right, no one has a crystal ball, although at this minute, what we're hearing that, especially given the economic conditions, that interest rates are not expected to rise dramatically, at least in the foreseeable future. But as you know, if we had crystal balls, we'd all be in a different place.
So what I just want to make sure that the council understands is that for tonight, this is a notice of intent. It allows the financial team to start moving forward with the bond that was passed by the overwhelming majority of residents here in 2020 for road type projects. And we can still have time to discuss it further before it's finalized. But with all the hoops, frankly, that the team and the village need to go through in order to make sure that the finance authority is willing to loan us the money, we really do need to get started with the notice of intent to carry out the wishes of the community in terms of this bond.
Yeah, Mayor, I think we need to have a work study with a little bit more in-depth discussion about this bond issuance, and let's have some meaningful discussion about it and bring in everybody that needs to be brought in so we can understand it fully.
Thank you. I believe we have a motion and a second on the consideration of the notice of intent this evening. So is there any more discussion? All right, I'm going to take a vote. It's on the notice of intent. Counselor Waldman,
Aye.
Counselor Murray,
Aye.
Counselor Burkett,
Aye.
Counselor Lucero,
Aye.
Counselor Knight,
Aye.
Counselor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The second item is the consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2109. That's a resolution amending the building permit fee schedule. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, we have someone here, I think, tonight who can speak to this. Mr. Curry, who is here to represent the department?
Madam Mayor, I believe it's Joseph Benny is here, our building official, to talk about these fees.
All right, thank you very much. And for those of you who have not yet met Mr. Benny, he is our building official, and one of his first acts has been to help us with this permit fee schedule. So do you have something you'd like to say? And then you can respond to questions from the council, Mr. Benny.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor and councilors. Yeah, it's been interesting getting to know how it's done here compared to my last job in Bernalillo, where I used a computer and just there was nothing to figure out. But it seems like we got it all figured out. Me and Aaron had talked about the fees and what seemed like the fairest way to achieve, financial growth for the village, and also treat people fairly. And it seems like we came to conclusions that would be do just that. We could make a few more dollars on some of the permits, but be consistent.
And then if I understood it, I did talk to Aaron this morning, Mr. Benny, and it seemed as if from your position, you want to be able to give some clarity, additional clarity to people who are seeking different kinds of permits, and this document will, we hope, do that. Correct?
Yes, yeah, because it so far there's been changes to how I've done the permits, and based on the past, just looking at what Lee and Manuel had done before me, trying to stay consistent with what they were doing, they weren't being consistent. So I don't feel comfortable doing that. A lot of the contractors have been working here a long time, and they know when there's changes in the fees. So we want to be consistent is the main thing, and that's what this would achieve.
We definitely do.
Yes.
Are there any questions for Mr. Benny from councilors? Councilor Murray.
Just a curiosity, how much are the fees going up? Do you have just kind of a percentage?
It's nothing's changing in an upwards direction per se. It's just being more consistent. What I did do, I hadn't been charging a review fee, but the cost of building materials, when you have people applying for a permit, they oftentimes decide how much they're going to spend on the construction. But we have a fee schedule that would set it at a certain rate. And then if we're going to add a review fee to that, it basically comes out to the same thing they're honestly telling us, which is fair. But I hadn't been charging a review fee. So that's the biggest change is they don't add like 50% to one part of the fee for each permit.
Thank you. I think Administrator Curry has his hand up. Do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I would like to ask, first of all, I think Joe has been a big help working with Aaron on some of these fees and working for consistency. But Joe, if you could give a couple of examples of things that you've expressed to me where people have gone in and committed to building a home and then found out their cost of materials has drastically gone up from the time they started to the time that they actually get ready to buy the material.
Yeah, so since a year ago, one sheet of the common plywood that's used on the outside of the building was about $7, $7.50 a sheet. Now it's like $43 a sheet. So you're talking like 6 times the cost a year ago. And so overall, it's about 3 times what it was a year ago for, and even in short periods of time when they're trying to get their permit, like he was saying, there was oftentimes it go up like $10,000 in the month that it would take to get the permit in place. So it's very difficult for people to during this time. And that's why I want it to be consistent, because you know, they have to make the sale and they're trying to do it based on what it normally costs to get the permit. So if there's big changes, they need to know. And I also wanted the backup of a document like this that I could show anybody who asked.
Sounds like a good idea. Do we have any other questions before we take a vote? Councilor Parker.
Mayor Roque, councilors, Mr. Murray, thank you for providing this for us. And just another step on what he and other building officials see when people put in for their building permits, although many and most are putting accurate amounts for how much the construction is, there are people that will kind of fudge the truth so that their plan fee is a little bit less. And I think this takes that out of it too. So thank you for pushing this forward.
Thank you. All right, let me take a voice vote on this then. Councilor Lucero.
Aye.
Councilor Knight.
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Councilor Burkett.
Aye.
Councilor Murray.
Aye.
Councilor Waldman.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Joe. Good work.
Thank you.
Now for a discussion of Corrales Road. Tonight, we have a presentation from Dr. Jill Moser. She's our District 3 Assistant District Engineer from the New Mexico Department of Transportation. And I want to thank her very much for coming here tonight. And good evening, Dr. Moser. How are you doing?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. However, I'm not doctor for engineers. The PE after my name just means I'm a professional engineer. So thank you for giving me the new title for evening. But honestly, I'm not.
I just wanted to give you the creds there.
Well, I appreciate it. So I do have a PE after my name, which means I am a licensed professional engineer. So that's in our world. I had prepared a slide presentation. I will do the talking points unless I can share my screen. I will gladly send it out for you to share with everybody.
Jill, I think you can share your screen.
Actually, yes, it looks like I can. So
okay, I think it would be helpful. And let me just say that Jill has come tonight to talk about her viewpoint on 48, a road that we all know and love. And then I'm hoping that counselors will ask questions and then we can have questions from the public as well. Thank you. Take it away.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if you can see my screen, I just have a map here showing 448 and the pins with the southern boundary with City of Albuquerque and the northern boundary with Rio Rancho. Justin Gibson, my boss, who is the district engineer, he was on momentarily earlier. He did have to step off. Justin, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Justin, you're breaking up.
I'm present, just if there's any questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So yes, Justin is my boss. He's on here. Our assistant district engineer of maintenance is vacant currently. I believe the position is advertised for those who have worked with us previously. And I know in my meetings with the village, that was held by Tom Kay. He's now retired. And our assistant district engineer of construction is Isaac Chavez, and he is on military leave currently. So this is to provide just some questions that I know come from the public with priorities and how we take care of our roadways, and especially as it relates to winter maintenance. So this is a map, and I know it's very small and I can send it in a larger document. But this shows the Bernalillo Patrol maintenance area, which 448 Corrales Road is part of. So as you can see, the competing road interest for priorities is that patrol has I-25 from La Bajada to Tramway. Priority 2 roadways, US 550 from I-25 to the district line, which is around milepost 10. 528 from US 550 to 2nd Street. Priority 3s, you have New Mexico 313 from the county line to 550. New Mexico 347, which is the Cerro del Volcan from US 550 to Unser. New Mexico 448, New Mexico 165 from I-25 to the end of the pavement. And then priority 4s, New Mexico 22 from I-25 to the end of the route, and New Mexico 16 from 22 to the district line. So funding sources, unfortunately at the district level, and I know that there's a lot of questions about how or the maintenance and reconstruction and the upkeep of 448. So unfortunately for federal funding sources, the district pretty much only gets the NHPP, which is the National Highway Performance Program. These funds can only be spent on the national highway system and interstates. So that's interstates, that's US 550, that's 528. It's those big principal arterial type roadways. Then in the area we have STP, which is the Surface Transportation Program. And this provides flexible funding that may be used for any federal aid highway. So 448 is eligible for the STP program. Unfortunately, we do not, as a district, as the NMDOT, get STP large urban. That is a call made by the Mid-Region Council of Governments, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And we historically, as the DOT, can compete for, but we are rarely awarded STP large urban funding. The smaller communities in the city that are part of the large urban area, which Corrales is, will get more funding and more consideration than the department will. There's also small urban, which Corrales doesn't qualify for. It's more of our southern district, smaller communities like Los Lunas, Belen, and then there's the rural, which is usually the unincorporated areas of Valencia and Bernalillo counties. And then there's the Transportation Alternative Program. And just hearing this conversation tonight, you know, it's one that I can point out is it's good for non-vehicular projects. So for any trails or like it says here, transportation alternative. So it's good for, and I know that the village has or I guess the Main Street group has the Corrales pathway that they've been talking about. And so that's another funding source I wanted to be able to point out. These are all federal funding sources. The next page, I list state funding opportunities from the district. So the district is not eligible for these funds, but we oversee and recommend the award for these programs. So there's a local government road fund, which has the cooperative, which is a 75% state funded program, 25% local match. Corrales, I think, gets funding every year for that. The Municipal Arterial program, again, a 75-25 match. And working closely with the village and having the relationship that I do, we have been very successful in getting the map, as it's called, awarded to the village. And this was used over the past few years to help complete projects on, I think it was Loma Larga. But anyway, so the dots, the bullet points here just show that for a road to get the municipal arterial program funding, it needs to meet these 4 things. And then there's a new, it was a one-time, but now it's a reoccurring transportation project fund. And it's a 95% state funded project with 5% local match. And I wanted to bring this up here because that call for project should be forthcoming later this week. So I would like to encourage the village to keep that in mind for any of the transportation project funds that you might need for any of your projects. It's a sister program to the local government road fund. And I say all of this because I am trying to help lay the groundwork for discussion of 448. Before Tom Kay left, our previous maintenance engineer, he provided a maintenance breakdown cost of what it would take to redo, rehab Corrales Road. So year 0 would be, starting over to take what we have out there now and have a good road. And it's a 1.6 estimated need. Between year 3 and 7, you would need to do a fog seal, which would be about $20,000. Between 7 and 15, you would have a crack seal, then another fog seal, and then maybe a microsurfacing. So this just provides that breakdown of the investment that would come with a road like New Mexico 448. So over the past couple years, I have been talking, and so I have a outreach program that I do with my position with the department, where I try to meet with the local tribal agencies within the district. And they are usually on about a bi-monthly basis, some are quarterly. And it's just so that I can go and talk to the entities, so in this case, the village of Corrales, about what the project needs are. We try to have a good relationship so that we can talk about any project issues, what funding and everything like that. And in my conversations with the village, with, from anything from hearing from Corrales Main Street Group about the pathway project, or whenever we're reviewing access permits, or the number of crosswalks even. Whenever we have these conversations, we're looking at it as a state road. So I had thought, and why I wanted to come here tonight and talk to everybody here and answer your questions and hear what you have to say, is I think that 448 is functioning more like a local facility. It goes through the heart of the village. It really does act more like a main street for the village. And I think that there are some visions, at least that from the discussions I've been a part of, that to get New Mexico Department of Transportation state ownership of that road out of the way could actually help implement that. So, here I listed what I consider our pros and how I'm here to help discuss what might be considered cons. So as I discussed earlier, the village has more access to funding to maintain this type of facility than the district does. The pathway project, it has some hurdles to get through with approvals from the DOT. It can enhance the Main Street vision. We have been working with the village to restripe the crosswalks, but the issue is that there are a lot of crosswalks within short distance, which we don't allow. So we're trying to work to consolidate those locations. And so that's, part of the holdup that's there. And we're looking right now at finding the funding to do a $1.8 million investment to bring Corrales Road up to a level that I feel that between us and the village, we could potentially get this road transferred and address a lot of the concerns. Cons, I'm here to help address and consider whatever you have to say. And if I can't answer the questions, I have just a couple more slides that I will gladly work with the executive team at the district to answer your questions. I know some of them are already liability, and another is just the right of way. It's narrow, and it's going to be narrow regardless of the ownership. My next slide, 2 slides, are for the tort claim, the liability part. So going back to 2013, our risk person at the district pulled this, shows the number of claims per year on Corrales Road. 1 in 2014, 2013, we had a high of 3, and it looks like 2019. And it averages to 0.875 claims per year. All of these claims, with one exception, were pothole claims. And then the other one was a chipped window from a mowing operation. And the cost of those claims was a high of $500 for 2019, almost $400 in 2014. But out of those five of the 8 claims were no payment. And so we're looking at an average per claim of $120 per year. And this is really low for the district. You know, most of our claims come from the interstate, 90% of them. So what happens with the road transfer agreement is, and we've done these before with other agencies, is that typically they're implemented when agencies can agree that certain road and street transfers need to occur to better align the jurisdictional responsibilities. Like I said, you know, I think that there are some vision that could be implemented for the main street if the DOT wasn't in there saying, well, we don't allow this, it's a state facility, we have this state access management manual that means if you have this development, you need this length of turn lane and stuff like that. They also occur when agencies agree that the road does not serve regional traffic and does serve more local traffic. But it's not like we would just say, and nor would the village agree to, you know, us just saying, hey, 448 shares, we're going to walk away. We would work over, there's a section that's, you're not really meant to read this. This is just a sample agreement on the side that shows the road transfer agreement and conditions of transfer. And whenever we have the conditions of transfer, it's just to address what the expectation of each agency is. It could be, hey, you know what, we want you to completely repave, restripe, fix an end section, a guardrail, and that's what we would hash out and put in conditions of this transfer, along with a timeline for it to occur. So like I said, I just wanted to come introduce myself to the village, and I appreciate being heard tonight. I was sent some potential question answer to get started. If it's okay with you, Madam Mayor, I'll go through this list first, and then we can open it up for more questions. And I did include my email at the bottom so that if there are any additional questions, please feel free to email me. You know, we're here to answer the questions. So with that, what would the road repair rehabilitation consist of? Justin, I know you were working with Barry on that. Can you touch on that? What type of rehabilitation it is?
Yes, can you hear me okay? So the initial rehabilitation cost we're looking at is we're looking to make the rehabilitation of 1.8 million, and that could be a hot in place recycle or a shallow mill and inlay. And so I want the village to know that we're kind of having to rob from different areas of our maintenance program to kind of piecemeal that together. 448, like Jill showed, it's probably in the priority 3 category, and I'm sure you guys can appreciate with local municipality that all your needs greatly outweigh your available funds. So we would be trying to kind of do what we could to get out of our state maintenance program $1.8 million so that we could get the road in a good repair. That way, if there is this type of transfer, you're not essentially receiving, you know, a lemon in the car world. You'd be receiving it in good repair, somewhat, you know, somewhat good. That way it would lower your expectations for maintenance costs in the future and kind of get you over that first initial maintenance hump, because usually that's the highest cost. Hopefully that answers some of the question.
Thank you, Justin. Correcting grades, if the person is on here that asked that question, I'll gladly touch on that later. I didn't know what that meant, if it was like the curve geometry or anything like that. And again, the right of way is narrow, and we would not be widening, as the next one says, the road, because we would be working within the current roadway prism. There was a question about, you know, still being able to install culverts where they're needed. Again, that becomes a village and a municipal decision, and not the requirements that the department would have. And the timeline, as you heard Justin, we would be taking from other programs to make this happen, because like I said, I professionally see a lot of benefit, but of course I am open to, you know, to discussion. And we would work with the village on that timeline. I do know coming out of COVID, there are, or not necessarily coming out of COVID, but, you know, with the numbers coming down and things slowly reopening, that there's concerns about construction impacting businesses. So we would definitely work with the village on that timeline if we find out that this is how we're going to move forward. One of the questions also sent is this the only way to repave the road, agree to take it over? As I showed the funding limitations that we have to make it a major project versus what we can do. That's why we have only been pothole patching and doing even like larger, like rectangular patches. That's all the funding we have been able to have for because of the classification of this roadway. And so we are trying to maintain it, as the last bullet has, but to come in and do a robust repaving, that's where, with the other priorities, we are struggling to find those funds. But to make the big one-time investment, and then freeing it up for the village to take over, that is something that what we're willing to make happen. So again, my email's on here, and otherwise I stand sit for any questions. Thank you.
Who has a question for Jill?
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jill. So are you saying then that the rehabilitation would only be for the existing roadway width that we have now, that there would be no bike lanes or any width widening of the road to make it safer for bike riders?
That's correct. We would only be the footprint, the footprint that the roadway is now.
Is that meeting state standards?
I would have to look, because you specifically bring up bike lanes. I would have to look and see where 448 is on the statewide bike plan. But I mean, yes, for a maintenance type project, it is to maintain the existing footprint. Whenever you're trying to widen, that's more of a reconstruction, and that comes with different standards.
So also then I would have, is there any need for maybe utility work? I don't know if there's, what's under the road, and is the base sufficient to be able to take the rehabilitation and make it last for 20 or 30 years?
We believe so. I mean, whenever we're looking at this, that's why Justin threw out the couple options that we have for the maintaining the various type of treatments we could, and that would be to get the life cycle, because whenever any project that we do expect a certain return on the investment, whether that's 10 or 20 years. And so that's what we're looking at. And with Corrales Road, it's a lower traffic facility. Whenever you look at the type of facilities that we have, especially in that patrol with I-25, 550 and 528. So I know before Tom left, he felt that this would get it that 20, 30-year lifetime with those intermediate treatments to help keep the oil in the road that will help the life cycle of the road.
Can I jump in for a second there,
I'm
Jill?
going to, actually, I'm here. I'm going to call on Counselor Waldman, then Counselor Knight, then Counselor Parker.
A couple
Counselor Waldman?
questions. There was an estimate, I believe, several years ago, since this road started out as a farm road in the 50s to bring crops to Albuquerque. The road was never constructed properly. It was just laid over. And there was an estimate a few years ago that might cost $25 million to actually rebuild the road up to standard. We know that some repairs were done 4 or 5 years ago that are now, it's now almost a washboard in certain parts of Corrales Road. And I'm wondering how this 1.8 million is going to satisfy that kind of surface for many years in advance. Second question is, you said that Corrales Road is designated as a local road, and I'm wondering if any studies have been done in the last year of the increased traffic as a result of your construction of 550. We see an awful lot of diversion, we think, coming down from Rio Rancho through Corrales to get downtown that normally would go north to get 550 onto 25, and people have been diverting. Has there any studies been done as to that increase in traffic? Thank you.
Justin is still on here, and so I think he has information to add. And as for the 25 million, I have not heard that unless that was, for a major reconstruction to widen the road and everything like that, which again is not what we are talking about here. This is to get the pavement in a state of good repair. Justin, if I may defer to you, do you have anything additional to add?
Yes, thank you. The $1.8 million investment was based on robust maintenance. I want to be clear, it's not going to be a reconstruction type cost or project. So with a maintenance type preservation, we typically see that prolongs the life of the roadway. It doesn't rejuvenate it to the point of reconstruction. The length of the corridor, I would say that 25 million is probably not far off if we were talking about a total reconstruction. The issue that Corrales Road has is kind of problematic of some of the areas that are they're rural and they're not, they're local roads that have a lot of encroachments. So there's some challenges that exist with Corrales Road 448 that if it was reconstructed, there could be quite a bit of encroachment from the existing properties that could present some challenges. The last time that we went through and did a project like that was of similar nature is New Mexico 47 through the valley of right through Los Lunas going towards Tomé. And with that, a lot of property acquisitions had to be had. And I don't think that that's really the intent of what Corrales would wanting to be doing to that type of roadway, because it would be taking a lot of properties to acquire the amount of right of way that would be needed to bring it up to a standard of an urbanized section. We're talking medians, sidewalks, multi-use paths. You can't fit it within, you can't shoehorn it in there if the right of way doesn't exist. As far as the underlayment of the roadway, I know that was part of the question. The type of service treatment that we're looking at would be a 2 to 3 inch mill or a hot in place recycle. All of this, as Jill's talked about just earlier, these are maintenance preservations that only deal with the existing asphalt, bringing it up and rejuvenating the oil, or removing it and placing fresh asphalt with new oil and the top mats. This doesn't adjust or fix underlayment of the base of the existing pavement. So this would not be a reconstruction. So, and like Jill has mentioned earlier, the funds that we're looking at to actually make this come to fruition, essentially there's a project somewhere that we're having to delay to try to get this to completion, because it was brought to my attention by actually a constituent that came through through the front desk that asked us to take a look at Corrales Road, that was a resident of Corrales. And so we kind of started looking into it, and I started looking at the maintenance preservation that's been done, and found that there was things that we could do to improve. But when talking with Jill, there's a lot of challenges with us being able to fund projects on Corrales Road, because we don't really compete real well with some of the mid-region council of governments projects. And so obviously with NMDOT, our priorities are going to be the interstates, and a lot of the funding doesn't even qualify for this type of roadway. As far as in the second question, no, we haven't done any studies, but I know that we continually do studies on roadways. The closest thing that we have is probably the second phase of New Mexico 528. There's probably some traffic counts that were done for the second phase that's going from where 448 comes into 528. That project we're looking at doing, taking it out to bid later on this year. So there may be some traffic data from that, but not specifically anything that's been done on 448.
Thank you. I'm just concerned about the, if you go through and spend the 1.8 million and it comes out to only lasting 3 or 4 years, as this surface has in Corrales Road, we're back to where we started from. It's again, it's in washboard in certain parts of the center part of town. So hopefully the materials or the way you do things might be a little improved from the way it was last time. But thank you.
If I may, I do believe they only did a micro surfacing on that the last time, which was just to add a real thin layer of pavement over there, which did not address those other issues like we would be fixing this.
Counselor Knight?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Since right now we're on priority 3, how long would it take us for Corrales to get to a priority 2 or priority 1 if we decided not to do this? And also, didn't the governor just sign like $300 million for roads? We're not included with that at all?
So I can speak to a little bit of the proposed legislation from House Bill 2. The district from state funds, we're looking at getting 25 million of those. We're addressing interstate projects and some interstate and interchange projects. We do address maintenance through the capital outlay type funds, or the ones that are appropriated by the legislature. 320 million doesn't specifically all just go to the district. We're in the neighborhood of about 25 million to 28 million is what we will receive off of House Bill 2. So that what's really robust is the local government transportation project fund. There's 120 million that's available to local governments with a 5% match, with even a waiver exception if applicable for that 5%. So it's more like a grant program. That's kind of what has been the discussion between me and Jill, is that how well Corrales Road could compete for that type of funding. And I'll kind of let Jill talk about that a little bit.
Justin just covered on what I was going to with the 120 million. 150 million came to the various districts, that gets divided amongst the districts, which is that 25 million that Justin said that was earmarked for interstate improvements and interchange improvements. And then the 120 million, excuse me, that's the one I had mentioned earlier, that there's going to be that call for projects. I believe they're trying to get that out on Thursday, the 15th. And that's for locals, and that's, projects that the district gets to push forward to Santa Fe and say, hey, these are the ones that we feel in our district would serve the communities best. And I also have a very good track record with the village, with making sure that the village gets, their fair share of funds. The village doesn't come to the Mid-Region Council of Government asking for a lot of federal funds. So what's nice is whenever they're the state funds like that I get to oversee as part of my job, I work with the village well. Like I said, we made sure that Loma Larga got redone. That's one of my ideas for this, is that, basically in the district for that municipal arterial program, which gets about $1 million a year, this is a prime road. There wouldn't be a higher candidate in the district for that funding than this. And that's, basically what we're saying is that the village, and as a local road, has a lot more opportunity to invest in the facility than we do. And as to the priority question, Madam Mayor and Councilor, those priorities don't ever change. Those priorities are, I-25 is our top priority, then the higher classification roadways, and then priority 3 for the group that 448 falls in. And I actually thought it was interesting too, whenever I first learned about those priorities during a maintenance presentation, is even the ramps on the interstate are considered priority 2s, with the interstate main line being the priority 1.
Thank you. Councilor Parker.
Mayor Roque, Councilors, Ms. Mosier, thank you. You answered part of my question on there, and one of it was, should we take on the responsibility of this road? And we applied for these other sources of funds that you were talking about. I was curious to see how competitive that would be and where we would stand in there. So I think that you gave an answer to that question of it. The second one was, I'm glad that there's only an average of $100 a year with claims on that road, but is there historically, do you have data in terms of what the largest amounts of those claims have been through the years? Because on that S curve periodically, I think a car ends up in someone's living room. And so I'm just curious to see if there's any information on those large dollar claims that I'm sure have happened historically on that road.
I have the raw data here. Now, granted, this is only back to 2013, with the highest dollar value one being $504.66, and that was in 2020.
Yeah, I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think it, like, going farther back than that, if we're looking at taking on the road, it would be multiple decades back to see what kind of trouble may have happened on that road that we would be ultimately responsible for at that point.
Oh, and I can work with our risk and safety division to have those numbers pulled. If you can just give me some time to research that, and I can either come back to a future meeting like this, or I can provide that response to the mayor and get that information for the group and to be shared. If you just let me know, do you want me to go back 20 years? Do you want me to go back as far as our records go? I mean, we'll gladly do that.
Okay. All right. I think maybe just getting a feel of the commission over time to see what they might want would be good.
Do I have questions from Councilor Burkett or Councilor Lucero? Councilor Burkett, I see your hand up. please.
I do have a quick question as far as some of the maintenance costs that you put up earlier. When I looked at those numbers initially, they looked really low to me as far as what the estimated costs of maintenance are. And I'm just curious if that's what it cost you guys, if it would cost us a similar amount. Earlier in this meeting, we were told that we got ICIP money of $100,000 just to pave a parking lot. So it feels like that the costs should be significantly more to manage 6 miles of road.
I'll take a shot at this, and then Justin. So Justin, prior to him becoming the district engineer and my boss, he was the assistant district engineer over construction. So he can probably touch on the cost that happens whenever you get the higher quantities. But our previous assistant district engineer of maintenance pulled those numbers from our statewide price agreement, and actually that is something that the village can, as a public agency, piggyback on. So for these type of things, you can piggyback with your public funds for public use with our price agreements. And that is where Tom pulled those numbers from. Now, granted, I think that those numbers are maybe a year old, because I want to say I provided that to the village about this time a year ago. We can do numbers based on inflation, but again, I want to defer to Justin because he can probably touch more on your small quantities, high mobilization for a parking lot versus the economics that come whenever you have higher quantities. Justin?
Yes, thank you, Jill. So I would, if you oblige me, I'll kind of relate this to like a vehicle. So if you take a vehicle, you buy it and it's brand new, and you drive it, you never change the oil, and you wait until it runs out of oil, it's going to be a lot more to replace your engine than it is to just do an oil change. So essentially, I use that as kind of an analogy to the repair costs or the maintenance costs. The 1.8 million gets about 2 inches into the existing asphalt and replaces it and rejuvenates it. After that, there's going to be cyclical maintenance costs that are associated that have to be done at cyclical intervals. If that's done, that's what keeps the maintenance costs lower. Now, when we talk about life cycle, just like with the car, at some day, there's a cost where it's cheaper to buy a new one than it is to keep trying to repair the old one. Some point, Corrales Road would probably need a reconstruction or a maintenance where it actually got into the subgrade. And some of the things that are actually out there that could be done is like full depth reclamation, where you actually pave over the top of it. So it replaces the base course over the top of the subgrade. And then you actually pave HMA, which is hot mix asphalt, over the top of it. At some point, Corrales Road would need to have that. That's typically what we talk about at the end of 15 years, 20 years. That's the type of maintenance that has to be done. For what we're looking at now, we're talking about 2 and 4 year maintenance interval cycles to keep the maintenance costs lower. So at some point, there will be a large maintenance cost, which is a reconstruction cost. But what the maintenance cost that Tom had put together would be like a heavy maintenance to rejuvenate it, and then a cyclical maintenance that would need to be done to keep it in good repair for as long as possible.
Okay. Now, without being too assertive, how do we have that conversation about reconstruction if we know it's going to need to happen 15 or 20 years from now, and we're in this point now where we want to put $2 million roughly into it? How do we have the conversation of looking at the reconstruction now? Because none of the easement stuff is going to go away between now and 20 years from now. If anything, it's going to get worse. I mean, I'd rather, if we even consider taking this thing on, we're taking it on with a full bill of health.
It would need to be something that's, and Jill can speak to the long range planning, but it would need to be something that's kind of brought forward in long range planning type of views. So for like the district, we have long range plans. We deal with our STIP, that's our 4 year plan, where the first 2 years are physically restrained so that we can start planning those projects. But the district, there's a project that we're working on right now that's been 20 years in the process. If you look at our interstate bridges, we're doing, like, let's just take Gibson Boulevard, for example, the interchange there. We have functionally obsolete bridges. They were built in the 1960s, and they're looking to be replaced in, 2026, 27 year, in 2027, 2028. So it takes some time, but it would take some strategic long-range planning by the village or the DOT for that matter, for whoever owns that road. And we're not talking about something that it's done in 6 months or a year. It's years out.
Thank you. Thank you. Kevin, did you have a question?
Well, not necessarily a question, it's more of a comment. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Moser, and thank you, Mr. Gibson, for being here and giving us all this information. I think most of my questions have been addressed. I guess, the biggest glaring issue that I see, and I think it's the kind of the overall air of what we as a village is trying to accomplish is we're looking at the long-term aspect of taking on this road and the cost it would be to this village to maintain it. And I know there would be a lot more discussion as far as the negotiation goes, but my biggest concern would be the long-term maintenance of this road and how we would, as a village, would accomplish that. And like I said, I think you guys answered the lion's share of my questions, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around how we could do that in cooperation with the Mexico DOT and moving forward as far as making this a good decision, a good partnership to go along with it. So no, I appreciate y'all being here. We gave us a lot to think about and gave us a lot to discuss.
Mayor, may I add something to Kevin's comments?
Who is this?
Justin Gibson.
Okay, thank you, certainly.
One thing that I'd like to add is if we look at something from the strategic planning perspective, studies are where we need to really start with Corrales Road. So that would be the first thing to actually look at something long-term is, I know that the village would be able to actually apply for funding to do studies. And that's probably where we would need to start to look at for like a reconstruction type of project. And that at least would start encompassing the 6 miles of roadway to evaluate it from an engineering perspective. And I believe that there's flexibility within that transportation infrastructure project fund that would be something that I would, allude to for y'all that maybe you would consider for applying for that type of project.
Thank you. I'd like to ask, I'll get right back to you, Councilor Murray. I just wanted to ask the staff who've come on tonight if any of them have a question since they deal with our roads constantly.
Yes, I still want to know what will be done about these culverts. We've already had a couple of issues and they're not getting any better.
I believe, before we had asked for a list of the culverts, and I can't remember if we got the full list so that we could discuss those with Tom prior to him leaving, but that is definitely something we could add to the discussions, how to move forward on this, depending on whether or not with the potential for a transfer or not. And again, just to kind of add to some of the previous questions, unfortunately, from where I sit, my biggest hurdle is I don't get the large urban funding. The source of money that I get that can go to this, I'm trying to compete, and anybody that comes to the Mid-Region Council of Governments and listens to me beg for, money to help with other projects. We don't get the large urban, and I can't spend an HPP on here. And so we are trying, to do a robust reconstruction on here. We would struggle to fund that just because we don't have the funding opportunities that the village would. And I say that in all sincerity. I mean, please come to MTB on Friday. I think, Mayor, you were at MTB the last time. You heard me begging and pleading for any little bit of help that we can get for regional projects. I'm trying to fund $100 million interchange project, and we're not getting that assistance, and we're only getting $20 million in HPP to help maintain the interstate a year.
Got it.
But for you, Michael, I will look into the culverts, and if you can send me a list of your culvert locations, that is something we can talk about.
Okay, I can get you that.
Any other staff members have a specific question for Jill or Justin? Yes, Chief Martinez.
Mayor, councilors, so my concern is the safety of Corrales Road. Jill, I think you and I have had these discussions. Have there been any recent studies on 448 pertaining to like safety studies? I know at one time, I think it was the Department of Transportation that was looking at some of the power poles and how close they were in relationship to your right of way. Was there anything produced as far as that you could provide to us to review?
Sir, I am not aware. I am with you. I vaguely remember maybe there was a road safety audit or a discussion of a road safety audit, but that is definitely something I can reach out to our planning group to see if they had any document that we had of that we would have had to share. So I can look into that, sir, and follow up with you.
Great. Yeah, because I'd be curious about that, because we, obviously I respond to a lot of, motor vehicle crashes, and, a lot of them involve these power poles. And I know that's been a priority of mine over the years to try to come up with some sort of funding where we can, try to address these. I know it's a sensitive subject. It's just, of course it's funding. The other question I have is, was there any sort of study or plan or engineer idea for the Harvey Jones? I know we've had flooding issues, and I think it was 2013 when it kind of plugged up. And after that, there was a lot of discussion between SCAFCA and Department of Transportation on future engineering of that.
Thank you, sir. Actually, that project did occur. So it was probably around the 2013, it might have been 2014. I'm trying to remember. It was during my time as the tribal local public agency oversight engineer. And we did work with SCAFCA. They had capital outlay and federal funding to address that as part of the study that they did. And I know that from the basin, or as they called it, the tub, up past the Harvey Jones, they did some improvements so that that they were thinking that would help with the flooding issues that happened there. And that project did occur. But like I said, it's probably around that 2013, 2014 timeframe, because it was whenever I was in my previous position. And sir, I also want to add, because you mentioned about the you're concerned about the safety, and I have to laugh because I forgot to read this earlier, but our risk and safety specialist at the department said that he actually believes that the low number of tort claims that we have on Corrales is actually due to you and your staff that help with the enforcement along New Mexico 448, and he just says that it has very low claim activity and is more impressive when taken into consideration the volume of traffic that road has on any given day. But he did offer his kudos to the strict enforcement of speed limits and holding drivers accountable that speed and for the safety of the roadway. So I did want to relay that to you, since you're on here from our health and safety specialist.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's our police department, that they do a good job. I have one more question, and I'm sorry. So I know you were talking briefly about, roadways and highways that are like distribution or like 528 and I-25, 550. I get that. And I know one of the counselors was talking about the increased traffic on 448. Is there anything that Department of Transportation has as far as identifying 448 as like some sort of relief route? I know we don't want to hear that, but we see it all the time, especially during winter storms. The past couple of winter storms where we've had to close off like Metal Arc and 528 on the south end, it gives citizens no choice but to come to Corrales to go out the north end, because I think the grade going into Rio Rancho is less, so where they can get vehicles up the road until we can get plow trucks, of course. Is there anything to where we can get more funding for that? As far as like, it's almost like an emergency route. It doesn't happen all the time, but it is used.
I'm not aware of the relief route designation or what that would take for that. I can try to ask that question. But I think that it actually has to be, designed in that way and function that way on a regular basis. I do know, as it was mentioned earlier about the additional construction with going on 550, you have some of the cut through. The nice thing is with the improvements we are doing on 550, I think construction's supposed to wrap up. And I'll defer to Justin, either late this year or about this time next year. And that should really help with a lot of that cut through traffic that you see because of the additional throughput that we can have with the additional lane in each direction on 550.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other staff questions?
Yeah, Mayor, this is Lynn.
Thank you. Lynn Sieverts. Go ahead, Lynn.
Hey, Joe. How are you, Joe?
I'm okay, sir. How are you?
Good. So the question was some of our businesses having their businesses in the right of way. Was all that taken care of?
No, I mean we have the right of way map. A full blown reconstruction would take care of any of those encroachments. Again, right now we're trying to limit that because we don't want to negatively impact those businesses. But if any are identified as a safety concern, we would take a look at that. But again, we usually address those on a corridor by corridor basis as we have a major reconstruction come through. But again, we would, if there are any that are a concern, we can address those encroachments because we have the right of way map that was completed 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Correct. Does that answer your question, Lynn?
Well, I think so, but I mean, that's going to need to be taken care of before we should take anything over.
I mean, so I guess my question back, Lynn, would be, do we want to look at the encroachments and address them? Because again, addressing an encroachment from the department standpoint could mean, just complete removal. And in other corridors, we've had the location where we've come in and tried to implement, strictly by the book, and then we get a lot of pushback, or it goes to the mayor. I'm thinking specifically of an incident that happened with the town of Corrales. It goes back to him and saying, no, we don't want this. Now we don't want you to necessarily go strict by the book. So that's something that we would want to work with the village on, because we wouldn't want to necessarily, adversely affect the business by taking their patio just because it is within our right of way and by, I guess, all rights we could. If this is something that the village wouldn't want to do should the transfer occur.
Well, I don't think that's my question, but I mean, that's something that the village has to be well aware of. So.
Right. Thank you. If there are no more staff questions, then Councilor Murray, did you have a final question here?
Yeah, it's more of put your thinking hat on, and with President Biden pushing the infrastructure package that he is there any chances that monies would trickle down into the local communities? Or is it going to be more monies that are focused on the priority 1 roadways rather than the lower classifications like priority 2 and 3?
So with the infrastructure bills, what we typically see, that's the federal funding, and that's what I touched on earlier. So what that does is it will adjust the amount of funding that comes through to either the STP, and then a certain percentage of that will go to large urban, rural, or small urban, and then the rest goes to NHPP. So it's not really so much the classification of roadway that gets impacted, it's the amount of funding in each of those funding sources. And again, anytime I go to the COG and I ask them for large urban, it falls on deaf ears. They, want to stare at me until I apologize for even asking for that funding. And I'm still only left with the NHPP for the interstates and higher classification roadways. So there could be more funding coming through to the large urban. Like the Mid-Region Council of Government received $8 million in COVID relief stimulus funding for projects. Madam Mayor, if you go to MTV on Friday, you'll hear that $7 million of this was going to the city of Albuquerque to help their projects. There was some other STP large urban that was unfunded, and $5 million of that's going to Bernalillo County for their projects. And that's all fund sources that Corrales would be able to get, and not that we were giving any consideration for projects.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Aaron, do we have any members of the public signed up to ask a question I'm going to ask, because this has been an extensive conversation, that if you're a member of the public, if there's a question that you haven't heard the answer to, that'd be great. Aaron, who do we have?
Madam Mayor, I didn't have anyone specific sign up, but actually I realized I did sort of have a question, or at least a point of clarification I'd like answered, which is
certainly,
we're getting pitched a $2 million or just under $2 million road rehabilitation, with the understanding that in 15 to 20 years we're going to have an estimated, if we're doing it the way we would want the road to be, $25 million project to completely reconstruct the road. So I just want to make sure I am correct in understanding that at the end of the day, if we took over the road today and we got our $2 million project, you're in one hand telling us there's no funding available to do it, but then telling us that there are funds available. I'm having a hard time understanding.
Okay, and I'll try to clarify. So one, at some point in time, we don't know if that would be in 20 years, to do a full reconstruction. It would just be whenever your regular cyclical maintenance ceased to be effective. And because of the type of traffic that's on Corrales, you don't typically get a large, not like the interstate where you get a lot of, large semis and everything going on that, you get campers, possibly some farm equipment, but it doesn't take the beating. So it might very well be more than 20 years. That's something we don't know. And so again, the funding is there. There are ways to get it funded. Unfortunately, me as the department, I don't qualify for those funds. I get NHPP, which I can spend on the interstate. I could spend on US 550, those type of roadways. There is STP large urban that, the region gets, that matches the amount of NHPP I get. That fund source is there. The local government communities qualify for that and get scored and actually get awarded those funds from the Mid-Region Council of Government more so than they'll let us have it as the department. So whenever I ask for that large urban, because my interstate projects qualify for large urban, but they're like, no, you play with your pot of money, which is the NHPP, and we're going to divvy the STP large urban up against our project needs, and our project needs being Bernalillo County, City of Albuquerque, City of Rio Rancho, Town of Bernalillo, Tijeras, and the Corrales also be thrown in that mix. Those are the large urban agencies that would be able to get that large urban priority for the funding over what we as the department get consideration for. I hope that helps explain it.
I guess it sort of does, but I mean, are you, just again, sort of putting on your thinking cap, as it was said earlier, if we're having to compete against Albuquerque, Bernalillo, City of Bernalillo County, and all these other larger agencies, what sort of outlook do you predict we would have kind of putting our hand in the pot?
So local agencies get the consideration the department does not, because they look at the fact that the department has NHPP, and so they don't want to give it the additional funds to help the department. As a local agency, your projects would be prioritized over anything that we would ask for. So, and they like to really spread that funding around the large urban agencies. And so they like to make sure everybody gets a good project. And so if I put in 448 and you put in 448, you will get the funding over us getting it, because they're not going to consider that. I mean, we might have to, so my guidance to the village would be, you would break it into achievable phases. You might not get a $25 million project in one, and you wouldn't want to pay the match for that anyway. But you might be able to say, hey, just like whenever we redid New Mexico 14, we broke it down into 2-mile segments to reconstruct that, because that gets rural funding. And at the time we were getting, $2 million a year of rural funding. So that's what we did, was we basically took 2 miles and did it. We took another 2 miles and did it until we got the 6-mile corridor done for that. But again, that was rural funding. And unfortunately, rural funding actually just dropped to $750,000 a year. So it's a good thing we did that when we did.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, Ron, do you have your hand up there?
I do, and I want to thank Jill and her boss for being here tonight with us. And I just want one clarification that may have been brought up, and any work that we can do on the crosswalks. I know you talked about consolidation and some of the concerns you have on them. Is there anything that the village can do right now that would be in compliance with the state to do some work on the safety of the crosswalks that we're so concerned with right now, that we can go ahead and do right now since it's warmer?
So the issue that we have, because I was anticipating this topic tonight, I talked to my assistant district traffic engineer, and she told me that we can add those priority locations, but because the temperatures are warm enough now, but we don't have the availability, because there's only, I think, 1 or 2 companies that do it. And then the issue that happened is with the freeze in Texas, it froze the resin sources. So we are having limits on the turnaround time for striping because of the epoxy that goes into the paint. So, let's schedule a separate meeting with Margaret to see, I don't know what type of striping resources that you may have that we don't have, but we can definitely talk about that and see what we can do to get a couple of the priority locations completed, because again, we are looking at the consolidation of crosswalks, and I don't want to take, another 15 minutes here to discuss that. I think that needs to be a standalone meeting.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And if Michael and I get a chance to talk with you, because the concern for the village on those locations is not so much the pathway as long-term, it's more of the short-term safety considerations. And I think we have the capabilities, I know we have the capabilities of doing that and meeting compliance if we get the authorization to do it. That's our concern, is the immediate safety of it for the village.
I understand that. Let's definitely reach out. Like I said, I know I talked to Margaret about when we could be out there. Because I think you guys have Margaret's contact information. And so I'm trying to open up her calendar real quick. And of course, nothing happens quickly when you need it to, but definitely reach out to her and let's schedule a meeting. Let's try and get it before the end of the week so that we can discuss this, because I do understand that it's urgent. But again, we can't have too many crosswalks in a close proximity, because that's not safe either.
Okay,
Thank you. Well, I think we've all gotten a lot of information tonight, and what I'd like to suggest is, I know Jill has given her own email, and I'm sure that anyone who actually has a question, if they send it to her, she will answer. And then I would like all of that information to come back out to the public as we continue to ponder this situation. But I want to thank both Jill and Justin very much for coming here tonight and answering our questions. Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Mayor.
A lot of information there, boy. Head is blowing up now. No, but I really appreciate it. Thank you. And I think after we've sorted through it, we'll probably have another set of questions for you, right? So we'll do that. Thank you again.
We are available. Please let us know if you need us to come back.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. Moving on now to K, the long-awaited tree committee. I have, here's a confirmation of appointments tonight. We are suggesting to confirm John Thompson, Amy Bell, Andrew Lisignoli, Joan Finley, and Jerry Kay. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved. I've got a second there. All right, thank you very much. Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Mel Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Waldman?
Hi.
Thank you. I think they're a good group, and I think we can look forward to some interesting information from them. I do think we've already discussed a couple of future agenda items. We're going to be working on the budget. We will do some extra work about our bond projects to show, I think, why the staff picked those. And then we will be having our audit review. I guess we're going to be having some public recognition of Lynn Sieverts and Courtney Kuntz. Anything else from any of the counselors that they, yes, Mr. Burkett.
I would love to 2 weeks from now discuss the playground if it's not fully reopened by that point in time. I know I've spoken with Ron, I've spoken with Lynn, and they're both actively working on solutions for that. And hopefully they come to fruition prior to that meeting. But if they do not, I'd love to discuss it and figure out what we need to do to make that available to our citizens.
Thank you. Councilor Waldman?
Yes, if there's time, I'd like to propose a presentation on the Drusilla Fields. The group, I believe they've talked with Aaron about that and have that on the next agenda.
Okay, that'd be great. Yes. Aaron, is that you?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to, I'll touch on what Bill said. I did get in touch with Alan Brower, and it sounds like the 27th will be a good fit for that presentation. I'll follow up with him this week and next week just to make sure that we're still on track for that. And then I do want to just make it aware to the council at the next meeting, we will also be discussing an appeal of a building permit that was denied. And then at the May 11th meeting, we will be having an appeal hearing of another site development plan. So just to put those on the radar.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. I think it's been a very interesting meeting, and but I think it could be time to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilor Murray. I knew I could count on you. Got a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, thank you very much. Good night. Thank you. Thank you for excellent questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Good night.
Mayor. Thank you, everyone.